If you take away anything from this video, let it be this. Now, I forget where I got this idea from, but it's the idea that there is a direct correlation between how good a piece of software is and how much advertising the company or organisation behind it pays for. Easy examples of piss poor software with lots of advertising revenue being your average VPN company like NordVPN or ExpressVPN, and some examples of really good software, maybe coincidentally or maybe not, with little to no advertising, being Mullvad VPN, or to a lesser extent these days Proton, though even they have fallen into the trap of paying YouTube creators for airtime on their videos. Allow me to let you into a little bit of an open secret, something that most people know about but don't think too much about. The fact that most of the browsers you see today are all based on Chromium. Yes, I'm sure most of you knew that already, but I don't think enough people really think about it and realise just how much of a bad idea this is. Not only for security reasons, being that if you find a foundational vulnerability within the source code of Chromium, it's sort of GG well played for everyone else, but also because every browser that's based on it all sort of have the same feel to them and just beneath the surface. Let's start off with Brave. Ooh, the Brave browser. Everyone's favourite security and privacy focused browser. Now look, I've heard that out of all of the offenders for terrible Chromium-based browsers that are around today, Brave is one that offends the least, with an apparently based CEO, though my personal research in that is lacking. Personally, I lost all interest in Brave when they announced the introduction of the BAT token. I know that was some time ago, and a lot of things have changed since then, but that alone was the killer for me. I even made a video about it all those 3 years ago. It is a terrible video. I'm sure I remember some sort of creator incentive to get people to download Brave through an affiliate style link that would give the creator and maybe the person downloading it some BAT tokens too. It just seemed a little dodgy. The inclusion of a quote Tor connectivity feature was also a blunder in my eyes. A couple possible major security and de-anonymizing bugs fixed later, I still wouldn't ever trust it. If you want to connect to an onion address for whatever reason, just go and use the Tor browser. Brave has some pretty decent default settings, so for your average NPC who doesn't want to tinker around with their browser and just wants a kind of, plug and play, it's not such a bad choice. But that being said, it is still Chromium based for all of its slight benefits and drawbacks. But that's nothing compared to OperaGX. Deary me. I personally dislike this browser quite a bit, but I'd like to think my personal dislike for this browser is well founded, as I will get into now. OperaGX is a browser focused on its appeal to gamers, but as I'm sure you already know by now from the bajillion YouTube and other advertisements the company behind it has given out to the world, it has a funky looking UI, a cool looking RAM limiter, and emphasis that the user use the sidebar for all of their shortcut needs. Side note, web browser sidebars are a fad. Don't sacrifice your screen real estate for a web browser sidebar, but anyway. Whilst there haven't, as far as I know, been any devastating happenings with the OperaGX browser, it is indeed still a bloated Chromium-based RGB mess that tries to be more than it realistically can afford to be. There's only so much gamerism you can force into a web browser before it becomes sloppy, slow, and difficult for your average NPC to use. If you want a more in-depth and slightly more balanced analysis, check out my previous video on the topic. But how can we talk about Chromium-based browsers without referring to the beast from the east, that is Microsoft Edge? Gone are the days of Internet Explorer, Adobe Flash Player, and 4 or 5 different toolbars and URL bars on top of your browser display. Welcome to the age of web browser slop, and Microsoft Edge is indeed no different. Well, by now you've gotten the gist of it. They're all very similar under the bonnet, just different paint jobs. Edge has a relatively high use rate amongst other web browsers, but only because it's the default browser within Windows 10 and 11. I can't imagine more than 3 psychopaths have decided to install Edge on a Linux-based operating system, because that was indeed a feature the last time I checked. And I think those 3 psychopaths psychopaths were the ones who took videos doing it. Microsoft Edge is also known for being the tool used by Microsoft to force its AI drivel down every modern day Windows user's throat whenever you decide to use the search function on the taskbar. That's Microsoft Edge, it's just unnecessary. And of course, Chrome needs no introduction. Your RAM is trembling just at the mere mention of the Google Chrome web browser. Chrome is by far the most popular web browser around today, and for admittedly good reason. Back in the days of 2008, with Internet Explorer and Firefox reigning the world of web browsers, as soon as Google announced Chrome with its relatively simple UI, and later on in 2010 its web extension store, it became one of the first things people did on their new system, as I'm sure you've had personal experience with, at least if you're around my age or older. You boot your system up, you go through all of the telemetry infested pop-ups through the Windows oob, load up into the default browser, old Edge or Internet Explorer, whatever it may be, and then proceed to download Google Chrome. We're all guilty of it at one point in life, I'm sure. Bare bones Chromium is open source software, but most of the web browsers built on top of that source code is not. And besides, having a lot of modern, semi-popular browsers all based on the same core source code can introduce some multi-web browser vulnerabilities. Of course, there's not much people can do to avoid that, even if they switch over to Firefox or a Firefox-based browser, but the case still stands. Maybe I have been just a little overzealous in my critique of Chromium-based browsers, but in my opinion there are much better alternatives to use as a daily web browser. Firefox isn't the be-all end-all of web browsers, believe you me, but it is a good start. And with the semi-recent introduction of Manifest v3 from Google and consequently Chromium-based browsers, some web browser extensions, such as everyone's favourite uBlock Origin, can no longer function as required or designed due to API changes on the back end of the web browsers. That means, in this case, uBlock Origin is unable to pick out the advertisements being sent to you whilst watching a YouTube video. Thus, it's unable to block them. uBlock themselves, I've heard, are trying to sidestep this and implement other ways to block elements on web pages that you don't want, but I think it's kind of a losing battle, especially against a corporation like Google, with quite a bit to lose in their own eyes, being the internet's largest advertiser and video platform provider with YouTube. This issue also goes for other extensions, but I think most people are bummed out about it because of the stripping of power from users to be able to block advertisements as well as other elements they decide to block on their specific web page. Now, this isn't an issue with Firefox-based browsers, at least yet, because they aren't based on Chromium, but in the near future, possibly, companies like Google are looking to inject elements, in this case advertisements, straight into the content that you're engaged with. For example, YouTube videos would have ads baked straight into the video itself, as opposed to the sort of separate system that they have now. This would eliminate element blockers / filters for good, at least in terms of how they function now. I'm sure some other solution will come to fruition in due time, if that was indeed said to happen, which is looking increasingly more likely in this dodgy world we'll find ourselves in. But let's not forget about the lawsuits that Google are currently suffering from, and that American court case they've got going on about themselves being declared a monopoly. Will they have to let go of the Google Chrome browser and let it become its own thing? I have no idea. Personally, I don't think it's going to be that likely anything is going to happen. I think Google is still going to keep control of the Chrome browser, but only time will tell. Anyway, do you personally use Brave or any other Chromium-based web browser? Put your thoughts in the comments down below. Also, make sure to comment any web browsers you actually like, Firefox-based or not. Well, thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe, etc, etc, etc. I hope to see you in my next video.